Hey everyone, welcome to The Cheating. This isn't just a story about betrayal, it's a story about revenge, obsession, and how far someone will go when everything they love is ripped away. And trust me, you won't believe how this ends. If you think this was shocking, you haven't seen anything yet. At The Cheating, we bring you the most jaw-dropping, heartbreaking, and downright insane betrayal stories you'll ever hear. Stories that will make you question everything about trust, love, and loyalty. So if you love drama, revenge, and real-life betrayals that hit harder than any Hollywood movie, you're in the right place. Hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell because you don't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's dive into this story. I was never the golden child. That title belonged to Ethan, my younger brother by 2 years, my mother's pride and joy, the shining beacon of perfection in a household where I was nothing more than an afterthought. If love was a currency, Ethan was drowning in wealth, while I scavenged for scraps. From as far back as I can remember, my mother's eyes lit up only for him. She would spend hours preparing his favorite meals, adjusting his tie before school, brushing his hair as if he were a porcelain doll. Meanwhile, I was expected to fend for myself. If I so much as asked for a new pair of shoes, she'd scoff, "You're old enough to handle your own things, Damien." But when Ethan wanted the latest sneakers, she'd drive to the mall without a second thought. At first, I didn't resent him. He was just a kid, after all. But as we grew, I realized he wasn't oblivious to our mother's favoritism. He thrived in it. He wasn't just aware of his power, he weaponized it. By the time we were in middle school, Ethan had perfected the art of making my life a quiet, living hell. He never hurt me in ways that left bruises. His cruelty was more sophisticated than that. He would whisper cutting remarks under his breath whenever no one was around, planting seeds of doubt in my mind. Mom and Dad only keep you around because they have to. If you disappeared, I bet they wouldn't even notice. At dinner, he'd nudge his foot against mine under the table and say, "Mom, Damien was looking through your jewelry today. I think he was going to steal something." Her eyes would narrow. She wouldn't ask me for my side of the story. She never did. It got worse in high school. Ethan was everything I wasn't. Handsome, charismatic, a natural leader, the type of guy everyone gravitated toward. And me? I was just the awkward older brother, lanky, quiet, invisible. I wore thick glasses and carried books like they were shields, desperate to create some kind of barrier between myself and the world. And Ethan? He didn't just break those shields, he shattered them. I'll never forget the day I realized I had nowhere to run. It started with a rumor, one that Ethan had planted. He told everyone at school that I had a crush on my history teacher, Mrs. Calloway, a woman twice my age. I remember the way the laughter rippled through the hallways, the whispers following me like shadows. "Hey, Damien, you bringing her an apple today? Does she let you stay after class for extra lessons? Maybe she can be your first kiss, huh?" I wanted to die. But Ethan wasn't finished. Not even close. One day, I found my locker covered in notes, each one scrawled with Mrs. Calloway's pet. Ethan and his friends stood nearby, watching, smirking. He caught my eye, grinning like this was all just a game. And maybe to him, it was. I tried to tell my mother. She barely looked up from her magazine. "Oh, Damien, boys tease each other. Maybe if you weren't so sensitive, people wouldn't pick on you." That night, I locked myself in my room, shaking with anger, with humiliation, with something darker, something I was afraid to name. I pressed my hands to my temples, trying to drown out the whispers of doubt that had taken root in my mind. Mom and Dad only keep you around because they have to. If you disappeared, I bet they wouldn't even notice. One night, after another particularly cruel prank, I decided to test that theory. I left, just walked out, no note, no goodbye. I wandered the streets for hours, sitting on a bench at the edge of town, staring at the blinking lights of a gas station. No one came looking for me. When I finally returned home just before sunrise, my mother was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping her coffee. She didn't seem worried, didn't even ask where I had been. "Breakfast is on the stove," she said flatly. That's when I knew I was alone. And Ethan? He was invincible, but something inside me shifted that night. If no one else was going to protect me, I had to do it myself. So I started training. It began with small things, push-ups in my room, jogging at night when no one could see me. Then, one day, my father, who had always been absent, indifferent, a shadow in the background, did something unexpected. He signed me up for boxing lessons. Figured you could use it, he muttered, handing me the sign-up form. At first, I thought it was a joke. A sick, twisted joke. But then I saw something in his face, something I'd never seen before, a flicker of recognition, maybe even regret. And so, I went. And for the first time in my life, I fought back. It didn't happen overnight, but little by little I changed. The shy, awkward kid who cowered in the hallways started to disappear. In his place was someone harder, stronger, sharper. One night, Ethan tried to shove me during an argument. I didn't move. What's wrong? He sneered. Too scared to cry this time? I looked him dead in the eyes. And for the first time ever, he looked away first. Something was changing. I could feel it. But what I didn't know was that this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning of something much, much worse. Leaving home was supposed to be my salvation. I had spent years trapped in the suffocating walls of that house, a silent witness to my mother's blatant favoritism, my father's passive indifference, and Ethan's unchecked cruelty. But when the acceptance letter from Columbia University arrived, a full scholarship, my golden ticket out, I felt something I hadn't in years. Hope. The day I left, my mother barely looked up from the sink where she was washing dishes. She didn't cry. She didn't hug me. She just said, "Don't embarrass yourself out there, Damien." Ethan didn't even say goodbye. I didn't care. I was free. New York swallowed me whole in the best way possible. The towering skyscrapers, the electric hum of the city, the anonymity of it all. It was exhilarating. I was no longer the forgotten son, no longer the bullied kid. Here I was just Damien Hayes, top of my class, driven, untouchable. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. That's when I met Samantha. She was everything I had never dared to want. Brilliant, beautiful, with a fire in her that could burn the whole world down. We met in an advanced economics class, where she out-debated the professor on Keynesian theory and walked out of the lecture hall like she owned the place. I was in awe. We started as study partners, but it quickly became more. Late-night coffee runs turned into whispered conversations in dimly lit diners. Debates about philosophy turned into stolen kisses on city rooftops. She was the first person who truly saw me. One night, as we lay in bed, she traced a finger down my arm and whispered, "You're nothing like him." I stiffened. "Like who?" "Your brother." I hadn't told her much about Ethan. Just that we were estranged. Just that he had made my childhood hell. But Samantha, she was sharp. She could see through me. "Whatever happened between you two," she murmured, pressing her forehead against mine, "you're better than him." For the first time, I let myself believe it. For the first time, I felt safe. But nothing good in my life ever lasted. The nightmare I never saw coming. It started with small things. A text from my mother after nearly 4 years of silence. "Ethan's in trouble. He needs help." I ignored it. A voicemail from my father. "You should call your brother. Family is family, Damien." I deleted it. Then came the wedding invitation. Ethan was getting married, and the bride's name sent ice through my veins. Samantha. I thought it was a mistake, a cruel joke. I called her again and again, but every call went straight to voicemail. I emailed. No reply. 2 weeks passed before I finally saw the truth with my own eyes. A picture. Ethan and Samantha smiling together at a fancy restaurant, her engagement ring gleaming under the dim chandelier light. The caption, The perfect couple. Can't wait to spend forever with you, baby. I couldn't breathe. The woman I loved, the woman who had once traced my scars with her fingers and whispered promises in the dark, was wearing my brother's ring. I flew home. I had to hear it from her. When I knocked on her apartment door, she answered in a silk robe, the same one she used to wear when we lay in bed together. She looked at me like I was a ghost. "Damien," she whispered, her voice full of something that almost resembled guilt. Almost. I pushed past her, my heart pounding so hard I could barely see straight. "Tell me it's not true." She exhaled slowly, wrapping her arms around herself. "I was going to tell you." I laughed, a cold, bitter sound. "When? At the wedding? During the vows?" She swallowed hard. I didn't plan for this to happen. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that this was some kind of mistake, that Ethan had manipulated her like he manipulated everyone. But then she said something that shattered me into pieces. "I never stopped loving you, Damien, but Ethan, he's the kind of man I need. The kind of man she needed. Not me. Him." I left without another word. And that was supposed to be the end of it. But the universe wasn't done playing with me yet. The wedding from hell. I should have burned the invitation. I should have ignored the calls. But I went, because I needed to see it with my own eyes. The venue was a lavish estate, the kind of place that screamed money and power, two things Ethan had always had in abundance. I stood in the back, hidden in the shadows, as Samantha walked down the aisle. She was stunning, breathtaking. And when she reached Ethan, she glanced up at him with a look I had once thought was meant for me. A knife twisted deep in my gut. The officiant cleared his throat and spoke the traditional words. "If anyone has any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now, or forever hold your peace." Silence. Painful, suffocating silence. I could have walked away. I should have. Instead, I stepped forward. All heads turned. Gasps rippled through the crowd. And in a voice that was steady, calm, and laced with every ounce of betrayal I had ever felt, I said, "She was mine first." I should have been satisfied with the chaos I unleashed at the wedding. I should have felt something: victory, closure, relief. Instead, I felt nothing at all. The moment I walked out of that venue, my body went numb. The gasps, the shocked whispers, the way Ethan's face had twisted in pure rage, none of it mattered. Not even Samantha's expression, torn between guilt and something dangerously close to regret. I should have left and never looked back. But the story wasn't over yet, not even close. A game I didn't know I was playing. The text started a week after the wedding. "Unknown number. I never wanted to hurt you." "Unknown number. Can we talk?" "Unknown number. Please, Damien, I need to explain." I deleted them without replying. I wasn't going to let Samantha crawl back into my life. Then came the calls. I never picked up. Until one night, the night that changed everything. I had just gotten home from work when my phone lit up. Not a number I recognized, but something in my gut told me to answer. I put it on speaker, expecting to hear Samantha's voice, but it wasn't her. It was Ethan. "Damien," he said, his voice eerily calm. "You should sit down for this." Something about his tone sent a chill down my spine. "What do you want?" I snapped. There was a beat of silence, and then, "Samantha is pregnant. A blade to the heart." I stopped breathing. My hand clenched around my phone. "What?" "You heard me," Ethan said smoothly. "She's having a baby. My baby." The room around me blurred. Walls closed in. My pulse roared in my ears. Ethan wasn't calling to gloat. No, this was something else. There was a smirk in his voice, but underneath it, I heard something I never expected. Fear. "She's not sure it's yours, is she?" I said, my voice dangerously low. Another pause. A long one. Then, for the first time in my life, Ethan faltered. And I knew. It could be mine. Samantha showed up at my apartment the next day. She looked different. haunted, exhausted. Her eyes were puffy, like she hadn't slept in days. She didn't even try to smile. "Damien," she whispered, "please, let me in." I wanted to slam the door in her face. I wanted to scream at her, ask her how she could do this to me. But I couldn't move. I let her in. She sat on my couch, her hands gripping each other so tightly her knuckles turned white. "I made a mistake," she said. I almost laughed. "Which one?" She flinched. "Good. Let her feel a fraction of what I felt." Then she whispered the words that almost brought me to my knees. "I think the baby might be yours." The paternity test was the only thing that mattered now. Samantha was 3 months along, and the doctor said we could get an early DNA test through a non-invasive blood sample. 2 weeks, 14 agonizing days of waiting. Ethan, of course, was losing his mind. He called me every single day, sometimes screaming, sometimes begging. "You don't deserve to be the father. If this kid is yours, I swear, you can't take her away from me." The irony of it all was so bitter I could taste it. The entire time we were together, Samantha had never talked about wanting kids. She had always brushed off the idea, said she wasn't ready. But now she was pregnant with either my child or my brother's, and she didn't even know which one of us was the father. I had never felt more disgusted in my life. The night before the results came in, Samantha called me. Her voice was soft, hesitant. She hesitated. "I just want you to know that no matter what happens, I never stopped loving you." I stared at my phone in disbelief. "Are you serious?" I whispered. Silence. Then, "I don't know how to fix this." "You can't." She inhaled sharply. "Damien, please." I hung up. Some things weren't meant to be fixed. And the moment of truth. The results came in the next day. I met Samantha at the clinic. Ethan was already there. His leg bounced anxiously. His jaw was clenched. Samantha sat between us, her fingers trembling. The doctor walked in, holding the envelope. I felt like I was going to throw up. She opened it, scanned the paper, and then her expression shifted. She handed it to Samantha. Samantha's lips parted, her breath shaky as she read. And then she turned to Ethan. "It's Damien's." Ethan snapped. Before I could even react, he was on his feet, flipping the chair over, screaming. No, that's bullshit." The doctor took a cautious step back. Samantha burst into tears. And me? I just sat there, staring at the paper. I had won. But why did it feel like I had lost? I thought the worst was over. I thought I could finally move on, start a new life with my child. But then, 3 days later, I received a message that made my blood run cold. A picture. It was taken from outside my apartment window, a silhouette in the darkness. And the caption? "You took everything from me. Now I'll take everything from you." I should have left town. I should have packed a bag, taken my unborn child, and disappeared. But I didn't, because some part of me, some stupid, stubborn part, believed that Ethan wouldn't actually do anything. That was my first mistake. The first sign that Ethan was unraveling came 3 days after the paternity results. I came home late from work to find my front door slightly ajar. I knew I had locked it. I was sure of it. Slowly, I stepped inside, every muscle in my body tense. Nothing looked out of place at first. My couch was untouched, my bookshelf still neat. But then I saw it. A picture frame on my kitchen counter, face down. I picked it up. It was a photo of Samantha and me from our early days, back when things were simple, before the lies, before the betrayal, and across the glass, scrawled in thick black marker, was a single word: thief. A shadow in the dark. I called Samantha immediately. "Ethan's been in my apartment," I said, gripping the phone so tight my knuckles ached. She sounded exhausted. "Damien, he's spiraling. He's not eating, not sleeping." "I don't care," I cut in. "He threatened me. And if he's willing to break into my apartment, what's next?" She hesitated. "I'll talk to him." You think he's going to listen to you? I laughed coldly. He's obsessed with winning, Samantha, and right now he's losing. She didn't answer. And I knew, deep down, that she was afraid too. I started keeping a bat by my door. I didn't sleep much. Every sound outside had me reaching for my phone. Every shadow in my apartment made my pulse spike. Then, one night, I woke up to the sound of glass shattering. My heart slammed into my ribs. I grabbed the bat, moved slowly toward the kitchen. The window above my sink was broken, shards of glass littering the floor. A brick sat in the middle of the mess, and tied to it, a note. This isn't over. I should have called the police. But Ethan had always been the golden child, and I knew exactly how this would play out. Are you sure it was him? Maybe it was just some random vandal. Come on, Damien. It's not like Ethan would actually hurt you. Number. If I wanted to stop this, I had to do it myself. I told Samantha to set up a meeting. Somewhere public. Somewhere where Ethan couldn't pull anything. We met at a cafe downtown. Ethan walked in like he owned the place, dressed in his usual designer arrogance. But there was something off about him. His eyes were bloodshot. His shirt wrinkled like he hadn't changed in days. He slid into the booth across from me and smirked. Nice to see you, brother. I clenched my fists under the table. Cut the shit, Ethan. I know you broke into my place. His smirk widened. Prove it. I exhaled slowly. I don't want this to get worse. Walk away. Move on. You don't get to threaten me, Samantha, or my kid. His expression darkened. Your kid? Yes, I said coldly. My kid. His fingers drummed against the table, his jaw twitching. Then he leaned in. You stole my life, Damien. His voice was quiet, but laced with venom. You stole her from me. You stole my family. And you think I'm just going to let that slide? I didn't blink. It's not my fault she didn't love you. His hand shot out. Fast. Grabbing the edge of my coffee cup, he flung it straight at my face. The scalding liquid burned my skin. I shoved back, knocking the table into his chest. People were staring. The cafe fell silent. Samantha gasped. Ethan, stop! A manager stormed over. Sir, you need to leave. Now. Ethan stood, chest rising and falling rapidly, eyes wild with rage. Then, with a twisted grin, he whispered, I hope you sleep with one eye open. And just like that, he was gone. I should have known that wasn't the end. 2 nights later, as I was walking home, I heard footsteps behind me. I didn't have time to turn before something heavy slammed into my back. Pain exploded through me as I hit the ground, my vision going black for half a second. Then, a boot connected with my ribs, and again, and again. A voice snarled above me. You think you're better than me? Another kick. My ribs screamed in protest. You think you can take what's mine? I coughed, struggling to breathe. And then I heard it. The click of a knife. Panic surged through me. I rolled just as the blade slashed down, barely missing my side. Ethan cursed. Stay still, you piece of... Footsteps pounded against the pavement. A voice yelled, Hey! What the hell is going on? Ethan froze. Then, in the dim glow of a nearby street lamp, I saw the flicker of fear in his eyes. He bolted. The Good Samaritan, an older man, helped me to my feet. You all right, kid? I could barely stand. My ribs felt like they were on fire. But there was only one thought in my head. Ethan had tried to kill me. I pressed charges. This time, he couldn't talk his way out of it. Not with surveillance footage, not with witness statements. Ethan was arrested the next morning. And just like that, the golden child fell. My mother called me in tears, screaming at me. How could you do this to your brother? I hung up. My father didn't call. Not once. Samantha showed up at my door, crying. I never wanted this, she sobbed. I stared at her. Then you should have never let it happen. I closed the door in her face, and for the first time in my life, I was truly free. Weeks passed. Ethan was in jail. Samantha was gone. My life, my real life, was finally starting. Then, one night, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This isn't over. My blood ran cold, and in the dark of my apartment, I realized some ghosts never stay buried. I should have felt relief. Ethan was gone, locked away. Samantha was out of my life. For the first time in years, I was free. And yet, I never felt safe. Because I knew deep in my bones that Ethan wasn't finished. And I was right. The nightmares continue. It started small, a shadow in my peripheral vision. A car parked across from my apartment that I didn't recognize, but seemed to always be there. Then, one night, I came home to find my door unlocked. Not broken, just unlocked. I stood there, staring at the knob, my pulse hammering in my ears. Slowly, I stepped inside. Everything was normal, except for one thing. A single Polaroid photo on my coffee table. I picked it up with shaking hands. It was a picture of me, taken that same morning, and scrawled across the bottom in Ethan's unmistakable handwriting. Did you miss me? The truth that shattered me. I drove straight to the police station. He's locked up, the officer told me, barely glancing up from his desk. There's no way he left that photo. Then explain this, I snapped, slamming the Polaroid down in front of him. He sighed, rubbing his temples. Look, Hayes, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe someone's messing with you. But Ethan is still behind bars. You can go check for yourself. And so I did. I demanded to see him. They brought him into the visitation room, separated from me by a thick pane of glass. When he saw me, he grinned. Brother, he drawled, it's been too long. My skin crawled. I know what you're doing, I hissed. You had someone break into my place. He tilted his head, amused. Did I? You're not going to win, Ethan. I have a life, a future. And you? I leaned forward, voice low. You have nothing. He smiled lazily. That's where you're wrong. Then he lifted his hand, and slowly, deliberately, he held up a single Polaroid. My stomach dropped. It was a picture of Samantha. She was asleep, curled up in her bed, taken from inside her apartment. Some ghosts never stay buried, Damien, he whispered. The guard came over. Time's up. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Ethan winked at me as they dragged him away, and I knew whatever was coming next would be worse than anything before. Leaving the police station, I went straight to Samantha's place. Banged on her door. No answer. I called her. Straight to voicemail. I kicked the door in. The apartment was empty. Not ransacked, not looted, just empty, like she had vanished into thin air. On the kitchen counter sat a single Polaroid of me, sleeping in my bed. My blood ran cold. I wasn't the hunter anymore. I was the prey. And a week passed. No word from Samantha. No sign of Ethan outside of that smug, chilling smile. Then, one night, as I was coming home, I noticed an envelope taped to my door. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. You think you can erase me? You think you can just take what's mine and walk away? You don't get to win, Damien. You never did. You took her. Now I'll take something from you. At the bottom was an address. No name, no instructions, just an address. And even though I knew it was a trap, I had to go. The address led to an abandoned house on the outskirts of town. Dark, quiet, wrong. I parked and stepped out, my heart pounding. A single light flickered inside. I pushed open the door, and there she was, Samantha, tied to a chair in the center of the room, duct tape over her mouth. She was crying, and standing behind her, grinning like the devil himself, was Ethan. Brother, he greeted, spreading his arms wide. Took you long enough. I saw the knife in his hand. I saw the madness in his eyes. And for the first time I realized Ethan never wanted to win. He just wanted me to lose. I didn't hesitate. I lunged at him. We hit the ground hard, the knife skidding across the floor. Ethan was fast, but I was stronger. I landed a punch that split his lip wide open, but he was laughing. Laughing, like this was the most fun he'd ever had. I grabbed the knife, held it to his throat. "Do it," he taunted, grinning through bloody teeth. "Come on, Damien. Be the better brother." My hands shook. For a moment, I wanted to. I really, really wanted to. But I wasn't him. I would never be him. So instead, I slammed the handle of the knife against his skull, knocking him out cold. Samantha was sobbing as I untied her. Her voice broke. I thought I was going to die. I pulled her into my arms. Not today. The police arrived minutes later. Ethan was dragged away, screaming. And this time, there was no golden child to protect him. Ethan was charged with kidnapping, attempted murder, and a dozen other things. This time, he wasn't getting out. This time, he wasn't just going to prison. He was never coming back. Samantha left town. She needed a fresh start. So did I. But before she left, she gave me something. A small, framed Polaroid. Not of me, not of her, but of our child's first ultrasound. "We're going to be okay, Damien," she whispered. And for the first time in my life, I believed it. Months passed. The nightmares faded. My new life began. Then, one day, I got a letter. No return address, no signature, just a single line. Some ghosts never stay buried.